offset. It's not a cost. We're trying not to snowball this thing into a great big cost.
Okay, so number 3, I thought we already had this.
No, we did, several times. We have one that's hired now, that's working.
Okay,
Currently, looking at the mitigation
well,
program.
working, meaning that we finally got it hired about a month ago after 19 months of deliberations that for some reason HR didn't help us get this, whatever. We finally have that person.
We finally have that person, and we're going on things.
Okay, the request though was for 4.
Was
So
for
this
4.
is for one of those 4,
Because
an
we're-
additional one, so you'd be at
That is
2.
correct. Because we're finding that we're not gonna be able to hit our dollar commitment to the state this year. Luckily, we can carry that amount over next year, and I'm a lot more optimistic we can hit it for next year. But
Of course,
so
our
far,
concern is that we don't want to just be paying it out, right, for the mitigation of this thing. We
So,
want
right.
we want to do the work out on the ground.
that's
Right.
exactly it. We don't wanna give anybody a cash check. We need to
Right.
get into the schools, we need to get into the communities, we need to get.
So what
boots
if
on
we
the
don't
ground.
hit that number next year and we give you this person, can we cut this person?
At that point.
Keep in mind,
we
I'm
would-
gonna go back and watch this.
I know you will. I have no doubt, sir. At that point, we would definitely have to relook at the program and see why it's not succeeding.
Okay.
Right now, I mean, there's a number of things that contributed to this year's, for us not to achieve this year's numbers.
Well, partly being the time it took to hire. I understand that.
And even the season itself, our season started off extremely early. Typically, we don't see decent fire activity here in the county till about June 26th. That's an average. And this year, we started to see it at the end of May. So our guys, instead of doing fuels reduction work, were actually instead getting called out on fires nationally and locally. So we weren't able to commit as much time as we would have liked to some of the mitigation. Same thing, there's a stat somewhere that fire season nationally has extended 78 days over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I went to a thing that they did at Weir 2 years ago in Oregon, and yeah, the projections for the federal government on their budgets alone for these are growing like crazy, so.
What
Astronomical.
happens, it happens again next year.
Yeah.
Same
If we
way.
come up short,
No, if we have the same type of fire
Yeah.
season.
we're farmers. I mean, for all I know, we could have frost and lose our cherries for the next 5 years. It's up to the
No,
weather.
but how do
it's
we
up to
meet
the
that number?
How do we-
What's your plan?
Yeah.
Our plan right now is to increase our visibility, to attend a lot more of the homeowner associations, to get into the schools. There is a fuels mitigation project involving livestock that we're looking at, and that actually looks really good. PR-wise, there's been other communities nationally that had good success with that. So that's something that we're really taking a good look at. We ordered that, well, the chipper, I don't see the court here anywhere. We're working on that chipper through the SRS grant funds. And so yeah,
discussion.
yeah, we're all into that. However, those are funds, had we chosen, we could have used that 100,000 for the prevention, and that would have given us 100,000 less of our obligation to the prevention grant. We could look at a second chipper, and that would help us out to achieve our numbers for next year as well. So there's a lot of things that we can still do
So
there.
how's the other counties doing that's on this program?
The other counties, the last time that we had a discussion, it was, nobody was better off than, we're all in about the same boat. We don't know how, this is the first trial year of this thing. County-wise, the counties have the bigger payment. You can look at Provo, you can look at Cedar Fort and some of these other cities, and they have like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 commitments. They can hit that in one public service safety fair day, in a mall parking lot. Whereas ours is in the hundreds of thousands.
So we should do a forced annexation for some plan?
When convenient, when it's convenient, that might be the way to go. So everyone's really struggling with it, but especially the counties, because the counties have a lot of grants. I believe Tooele County's is 700,000, and I'm glad I don't have that.
So here's my concern with 2 and 3. Unlike when you came to commission meeting and I had a complete misunderstanding of what the request was that day. What if it takes you another 7 months to get this person hired? Like, what's our plan?
No, at this point, everything is in place. We figured out the hiring process, the people, the moves, the state endorsements. We can move forward from get-go today to hire 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the time period would be.
So here's the other problem. If let's say this is approved, let's play it all the way out, right? And
Sure.
finally on whatever date it is, Deneen, December 22nd, whatever that last commission meeting is that we can approve this, right? 20th. That doesn't leave you much time. So if this is the thing, I'd like to see that plan, and I think we should have that come on a commission agenda now, knowing that we can start that process for a January 1 start date, because another delay is gonna send me way over the edge.
I respect
And it's
that.
not your fault.
Good, sir.
So for me, if, depending on what happens with this one, I'd like to see us take that game plan as far as for a staffing plan, knowing that there's not gonna be a budget hit this year because it still would be a January 1 if approved.
Yes, sir.
But we're gonna have to have conversations beforehand. to make that
Absolutely,
happen.
which is why I say it'd have to be on the staffing plan for this year, knowing that, you know,
Well, it wasn't, I mean, we tried at the first of the year.
But there was a misunderstanding on that one, so.
Okay? How about number 4?
Number 4, were the 15,504, that's to replace the overtime funds that we had to take out to meet our 2018 budget allocation bucket. So we'd like to get those returned, obviously. The overtime funds will get utilized, and they have been utilized consistently. Like me to keep going?
Yep.
Okay. Number 5 are the 3 utility beds for the scheduled replacements. Now, these Chevy trucks that we got, they were, during a different commission, they were put under recap, and they've been up for recap, I believe, for 3 years now. We're obviously gonna get these. I've worked with the motor pool. We got them all designed and spec'd out. But you'll also see that there is.
so 48.9 is the shortage on the recap.
I'm sorry.
So it's 48.9 to 22, the shortage on the recap.
That is for the utility truck beds that are gonna need to go on those. The service beds with the drawers, these will actually be walk-ins where we can store equipment and keep them out of the environment. These are the problems that we have now that we've experienced. A lot of they're called crew buggies. A lot of the crew buggies you see now are specially built $180,000 vehicles that hold all the people plus supplies. It's been more effective, we've found, if we can keep the people in the cab all up front and keep our gear separate. It's far more convenient, and it gives us a little more accessibility than the crew buggies. We can get into places they cannot get into. And it's been very beneficial in helping us stay out and to stay in longer on fires and help to generate those revenue funds. So we found this was an equitable way to do that. So that, number 5, is for the utility truck beds to be manufactured specifically for the trucks that are already in the 2018 recap budget. And line item 6 is because we're mandated to travel.
So what you're saying to me in a budget sense doesn't make sense. That's why I'm asking. When you say is already in the recap budget, that tends to mean we don't even need to discuss that because it was recapped, the replacement has covered it, so this doesn't even need to be discussed.
That's the bed
But
you're talking about.
But if you're talking 48,922, you're saying the additional from the recap. So it's not a recap; it's a replacement of what we've been doing using the recapitalization funds for that. This is the difference, and then we will start recapitalizing this sort of equipment on that same schedule.
That would be
The trucks
accurate.
and we've got
Okay.
beds.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
And federally, we're required to travel in a group of 20 to 21. That 4th vehicle, that is what number 6 is. It's the whole vehicle. So right now, what was recapped through the motor pool was 3 vehicles only. We need that 4th vehicle to complete our hand crew. And that includes the truck bed in total for number 6.
So in this case, it's the whole thing.
Yes, sir.
You're not doing the truck or the bed, you got the whole thing in it.
That is correct.
We only recapped $22,000 for trucks, for utility trucks. Me?
If I remember correctly, that was actually a department decision to not recap the vehicles associated with the fire crews because it wasn't known 10 years ago if that program was gonna continue. That's the email that
Yeah,
I
that
seem
was a
to
discussion
remember.
with the commission at that time, and that was a decision that was made, but again, in hindsight, that probably wasn't a very good decision, but that was the way it was made.
Of course, we don't know the revenue from this year either yet.
It should be on.
Well,
the-
Where they're out right now, there's still gonna be
Right.
some revenue come back in, so we don't know the full numbers. yet.
I think with them being out, based off of general numbers, we can anticipate another $100,000. And, that'll put us up close to,
1.5. So, just to treat you like everybody else,
yes, sir.
you give me a number and tell me that everybody keeps projecting their numbers going up. Well, you're the exception, because you're projecting your revenue going down. But yet you
1.3.
want more stuff to go fight more fires.
I think we based that off of just being a little more conservative in the past. To be quite honest, we haven't had any luck in getting what we need or basing it off of revenues. It's never, and the program itself has never been a revenue to program dollar per dollar expectation.
Has been since I've been here. At least that's how it was always presented to me.
Well, in the sense that if we turn in $200,000 in the clear after everything's said and done, there hasn't been an expectation that we're gonna get that 200,000
Oh,
back.
agreed.
Oh, right.
Yeah, agreed.
And so, this year we just tried a different route with it. Our revenues,
Well-
everything were relatively conservative.
Sure, but 2016, you had a $1.5 million in revenue. Looks like you're going to be about the same again, if not a little more. I'll knock on wood. So, why we wouldn't show that? Again, if truth be told, if we have no fires, obviously we know there's no revenue.
Correct.
I mean, we're not. That would be a blessing for all of us, actually, but not reality. So I guess that's the question: is, it's always easy to, knowing that your revenue we know will fluctuate based on that. It's kind of like the one coming up, Gel Medical. We were cautious the first year after it spiked, right? And then now we kind of know where
Right.
we're at this
Is it
higher
way?
number. The last 2 years, you've been over 1.5, so why wouldn't we be projecting at least 1.5?
And that's a good question. That's something I'd probably have to relook at.
Okay.
I don't have an answer prepared for that one.
Probably because in 2012 you're at 1.5, in 2013 you're at 1.
And if where it fluctuates.
Yeah. So it's a hard number. To
Sure, I do. Right. I just, they've been pretty accurate as far as fire prediction the last couple of years on how many billions of stuff in the West, and
So
so
it's going to get worse. It's not
And it
going to
is.
get better. I just don't see how it's going to get better with the fire loads and
Agreed.
the loads we have out there in the forest now. Unless we do some logging and do a few other things, just going to take it off. It's just not going to get better
You're absolutely right.
In the short term.
in the short term. Yeah.
There's no more questions. Thank you.
I just a couple on this simple ones. What I'm looking at, and I'm just gonna point out a few. There's a few on here, like the cell phone stuff, where you're at 12,000, and you've only used 7,000, 10,000, I guess, with the encumbered as well. How, on a budgeting process, when you get down through these, and let's see, another one here is travel. You're asking for, you have in there for 32,000, but you only used about 12,000 this year. So how do you fill these buckets when historically I don't see any of the travel being higher than, I think the highest one's like 12, 13, down to 2012. You're asking for 32. So what are you doing different?
It's just the different polls that we use from, and we might leave the travel up high for right now, and we might still be processing all the per diem, and if our per diem comes out of another account, then we'll pull from travel. So those accounts are typical accounts to go to, but depending on how the season's going or where we're spending our money, like when we were in Tennessee, we were basically all on per diem, so we knew we were gonna have a huge per diem bill once these
but
guys
that gets
got back.
replenished.
It gets replenished at the end, but we have to know out of what account we're gonna pull it up from, out of from initially to get these guys paid. So we're still taking that hit, we're just trying to shuffle the money around to which accounts. We don't
Okay.
wanna zero or run anything in the red.
So if I hear that right, then your travel, you don't expect a real increase in travel. You're looking at your travel as if you have 11,000 or 12,000, whatever your historical, and then we restricted 20,000 to cover those type of events, that's fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just to clarify though, their per diem doesn't come out of that travel account because they don't enter individual travel requests. When they go on fires, it comes out of the 4,800 account.
Okay, so special department?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we would need to do it there if we do that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, but thank you for that explanation at least.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now to the easy one.
Yeah, this is the easy one. Darren Durfee, Corrections Bureau.
I don't have an orange sheet, so it really is easy. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Simple. On number one, I know there was a question related to that that
Kevin?
Danae had.
Sorry. Will you, you can sneak out, that's fine. Will you really come meet with the commission as far as in the next week or two, and let's talk about where we want to go with that second position? Yes, as far as that. Thanks.
With respect to the food fund, and this is specific to food, I believe that what happened was that revenue was submitted, and then Jason and Larry sat down and started calculating food costs, realized that they had miscalculated what we anticipated it was going to cost in food. And so they submitted, when they filled out their budget requests, they were $200,000 in excess of what the revenue was. So when we got our numbers from Deneen, we realized that we were $200,000 heavy on food, and that had to be cut out of the budget in order to make that match. What that equates to is about 15 cents per meal in a calculation, so we're about 1.3 million meals a year.
So let's just feed them water instead of milk. Just kidding.
So that's kind of where that,
So why is the
Difference
revenues
is-
down?
no, when they submitted revenue, they estimated what the revenue would be. And then when they sat down to calculate food costs, as you know, some of those things
Sure.
fluctuate.
So they weren't off on their revenue the
They-
way you looked at it at this point?
Well, I think that the revenue and the cost would balance had they done it at the same time, but, they're looking at a 15 cent difference between when they figured out revenue and figured out expense. So they're estimating $200,000 more in food costs than the revenue that was submitted earlier. Does that make sense?
Right, but no replacement for revenue, increased revenue.
No, I think they would anticipate that cost would be transferred along
Budget
in
neutral.
the cost of a meal, yeah. If they had
And
refigured.
that's why I thought, because I always thought that was,
So production of the meal, they would say that would be 15 cents greater. So had they done the revenue at the same time, I think that revenue
Right,
versus
so in other words, we
expense
don't
would have balanced.
you just wanted to make that as a budget
Does that make
adjustment.
sense?
Yeah, so in other words, the revenue was under.
It was light.
Yes, we
It was
don't
light.
need,
Yeah.
And
this isn't a
so-
request, this is a budget adjustment is
Adjustment.
what
It
you're
would-
saying,
it
for
would
number
be.
one.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
So if we
that those
just
two
adjust the
balance.
revenue numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, so that those two balance,
Yes.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Hopefully
Sorry.
that makes
You
sense.
just put it in here
To
so
show.
that we could, to show it, because
Correct.
when I saw it in here, I was like, what in the world? Food's an addition? We just don't.
Yeah, no, that was, so when they figured out the food costs, we entered it in. So budget has been a progression throughout the year. We monitor our budget as we go out throughout the year and look at shortages, where we project we're going to be, that sort of thing. When they figured out revenue, when it was time to submit revenue and did the calculations,
Yeah.
they estimated a certain amount. When they actually sat down to start calculating food costs and what they figured it would cost for the end of the year, it was more than what we had submitted as revenue. So it would be an adjustment. Item number 2, in order to meet the 2.65 million that was additional operational expenses, we had to go in and cut some fairly significant areas in order to make that number. Most of those numbers were adjusted in overtime. As you look through our budget, you can see most of the operational costs are based on, what I had the lieutenants do was prepare their budget based on what actual expenses have been historically. and look at their 2016 and 2017 expenses and enter those in as they deemed necessary to function in 2018. So they entered those amounts into the budget, and then we went through and did an assessment of what those were. When we got our $2.65 million in addition, in overall operational costs, we went back through to figure out how much money we were over. In order to reduce it to meet that 2.65 million, we had to cut that in overtime and time-limited funds. So those top three priority requests right there are critical needs. It's food, it's overtime, so supervision.
Food, don't even talk food. Food's
Okay.
done.
All right,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not even on the list. It's
All right.
taken care of.
very good. So the next two would be your overtime to supervise inmates and time-limited funds. Those were the two areas that we had to reduce in order to meet that number.
Okay, so here's my question on your overtime, right?
Yep,
Okay, I can see where you've plugged in the number for 18.
yep,
We gave you $1.1 million, which was a cut because of ICE revenue, for 2017, or at least that's the budgeted number.
Okay.
Am I reading that right? Yep. No, excuse me, 813,000, but you've used 1.13, right? Now I'm saying the right number.
actually, let's see.
As of the day this was presented for us, or the report. The question is where do you anticipate ending up this year? Are you at 1.3, 1.5? Do you, because I know you watch it really well.
I do. Right now, based on, I printed off my summary report on October 4th
Okay.
and went through it.
So basically 1 quarter left.
Yep, right now we're at 1.135057. That's what we've used
Okay.
thus far this year. So 1 quarter left. It's,
So
Yeah,
1.4-ish.
yeah, 1.415. I mean, this
Okay.
is a busy time of year, obviously, with people taking time off for holidays and things like that. Plus, we've been short-staffed,
And-
6,
and
7
that's my
people all
question.
year long.
But you're still short-staffed.
We are still short-staffed.
Okay, because if I go back to the other side of that equation, and I
Yep.
look at your staffing plan wages, you're 3 million under, so you should still have. See, that's that balance I was talking about. That 1,100 should cover.
Should.
Okay,
I think it'll be tighter than we've historically
And
been, but it should.
That
Yes.
comes with cooperation with us.
right.
Yep.
Yes.
I,
And that should be the case, unless we ever get fully staffed.
Right.
Yeah.
But at fully staffed, we'll expect that overtime to be.
Sure, should be dropping down.
Sure.
I mean, I would say the number that you see there would be reflective of if we were fully staffed.
Well, I understand the budget
Expanded.
number is, because we always have to budget to a full staff plan with full benefits.
Yep.
That,
Yep.
I understand that, but
Yep.
again, I'm talking about what you're operating at with overtime and your staff, because I know where your staff levels are. I've
Yep.
been to your office and seen all the
Yep.
holes.
Yes. So, I mean, to give you some history, in the 7 years I've been chief, we've been fully staffed at one time. And it lasted about 10 days.
Yeah.
Well, tell Broward to quit robbing from you for patrol
So
and enforcement.
it just doesn't happen very often. And so historically, we're gonna be short-staffed, right? Any questions on those two? Overtime and time limited?
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Going back to,
Time limited. You're overstated. in that.
professional services, your 3,100 account. You have budgeted in there, 223,799. And I don't see any years in which you've even come close to that in the past. And so I'm just kind of wondering why that number is high. You spent so far this year 73,000 with 49,000 encumbered. Wonder why that one's.
Which is their historical average, ironically. That's-
Yeah,
In 3,100?
Yeah.
3,100.
So you put in roughly the same budget amount. but-
Tell me which account it is.
It's,
42.3, what?
Professional services, I don't have that, the first numbers.
It's, the corrections is all combined, but there's only 4 line items in there, and so probably the bulk of the money is coming from the GPS monitoring. So 2016, there was 108,000 spent. 2017, there's only been 71,000 spent, and then the 2018 budget is 219,000.
Okay, so GPS monitoring.
Yep.
I thought that was a one-time funding for JRI for the increase.
Oh. GPS monitoring is a ongoing, so each monitor that is on an inmate has a daily cost.
$4
So,
or something.
yeah, it's roughly it's almost $5 a day. So for every monitor that's
I
attached to
thought
an
we
individual,
attached it to them. I thought they basically covered their own cost to be on GPS monitoring, didn't they?
well,
Is that just the
we,
JRI?
so for instance, the monitor costs say $5 a day. We charge them 10 a day, but that does not take into account your personnel and all the other expenses related to GPS.
Okay.
The factor that it is still cheaper, even though we have them paying $10, it's still cheaper to have them not in the jail versus out of
Right.
the jail. And each individual that's out there can check, as many as 50 people who are on that program per deputy. So it is still a huge cost savings. But to keep that $10 a day manageable, so a lot of these people are indigent. And if they weren't on this and they couldn't pay that more than $10, they would be on us for $72.25 a day. So it's a weighted factor of determining, if we can get the $10, then we're ahead that much more. But we are way ahead if we're not putting them in the jail at $72.25 a day.
Your actual cost for GPS is about 37. Is that what we figured? About 37 a day is the actual cost. So it's much cheaper than 72.25.
But
So
that,
about
that
half.
includes staff, that
It's-
includes,
It's
that's
everything,
everything.
everything
Total
within
cost.
that program.
Yeah.
So the monitoring, the staff, the vehicle, it's everything. We average about 75 a day.
So just a clarification question then, if I'm understanding correctly, the revenue is set to cover the GPS fees plus the support staff on top of that, the $10 a day?
It covers part, yes.
Part of it,
Yes.
right? So then the GPS revenue at a minimum should at least be equal to what we're paying in the GPS monitoring, because the revenue includes more than just the GPS monitoring.
So who's tracking that now?
So going back to, so of
Hypothetically.
the 75, let's just kind of break down the 75 a day. There's up to 12 with drug court that pay nothing. And there's also some indigent that we determine, so let's say somebody has some serious medical costs that we don't want to incur.
Right.
We'll put them on GPS so that they can pay for the medical
There's
costs.
a few more we probably should.
Not us pay for the medical costs. In those cases, we the monitoring fee. The $5. So in theory, you
We're
would be
saving.
correct.
Right.
But I think there's probably, if you looked at who's actually paying per day, it's probably more in the neighborhood of about 50 versus the 75.
There are anchor bracelets out there that we're eating the cost on based on the alternative of putting them in.
So, so I guess the question is let's use like the contract cities or everything we ask you. How often do you analyze that to say, okay, maybe we ought to be at $11, right? Or $12? Because heaven forbid, if I were somebody that had to be there, I'd pay $12 a day for partial freedom, I guess you could call it.
If you guys would like to come attend roundtable, the judges will tell you that it should be 0 per day.
Okay,
Because it's prohibitive for a lot of those folks that are on GPS, because they've got fines, fees, all those other things, that obligations that they're trying to meet. They'll tell us that they believe, this is judicial branch, believe that they shouldn't pay anything, that we should just do it.
but
But
that's
we
because they keep
believe,
passing all the costs on to the county anyway.
but we believe that $10 a day is reasonable, that most people can work that in. One of our requirements is that they're employed. So if you're employed, you should be able to meet your fines, your fees, and also pay our fees. That's how we.
Especially at Target paying $11 an hour and everybody's starting to do that. You're right,
Right.
1 hour.
Part of the factor is, the truth of it is that the courts, if they find that they're indigent, they're reluctant to put them on that $10, because they know they can't pay it, they'll just put them in jail. and then it costs us $72.25, so we end up.
I'm not arguing the
Right, right.
program. What I'm just saying is because you know that 65% is all that's gonna pay on it.
Right.
Yep.
The question is
Could it go up?
should you guys charge $12.50 a day to help defray a few more of the costs? And again, at 50 people times $2, it's $100, it's 30, I get it, but
And it's
you're
finding
also
that
talking to
balance.
us about 15 cents a mil, so I'm gonna talk to you about,
No, it's finding that balance with everybody that's involved, whether it's an offender, whether it's the public defender's office who negotiates half these deals, and the prosecutor's office, et cetera. Trying to find that number that's acceptable for everybody, to put them in GPS. We have a difficult time getting
So-
people to funnel, the judges to funnel people to GPS anyway.
You're
so-
not saying, though, that that's the difference in the professional services, though?
Well,
but
I'm
no,
sitting
Deneen
here
was,
looking.
that's one of the 4 line items, was 200, or
But
100,000.
you're saying that's the whole difference right there, is that we're?
Right, because the other line items in there are minor, I mean, they're
Yeah.
under $10,000,
That's-
so
so
essentially
there's-
it looks like the program is gonna be doubling
So
in
we're gonna have-
2018.
Yeah, there's another $70,000-$80,000 more next year in this program.
So is that in, which, is it contained
It's
42,350? Is that what it's
Yes,
at?
programs, right.
Let me look at it real quick. So what Dave Steele and Jeff Jones have submitted here when they went through was, they had our cost at $6 a day times 100 inmates times 365. That's how they came up with 219. So I would say that that is overestimated based on what I know.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you're
So
saying
it could be
75 a
adjusted.
day, okay,
Yeah, that could be adjusted.
okay, so we will make those adjustments.
Yep.
So, okay.
So
Well,
it probably should be more,
Give the adjustments to Deneen,
yeah,
or whatever you want to
it
adjust
should
on.
probably be more like $5 a day. It's 4 whatever and change at 75 times 365.
Okay, and then the other one, just, on the 4520, mental health services. That one, as I'm going down through it, seems high. You've spent so far this year 35,000, you have 170 encumbered in there. And you have budget for 243,866.
What's she have?
This is the, mental health. 4520.
4520.
He asked for 243, that one,
243,866.
and he spent 204 so far through 9/12 of the year.
You got it?
Budget amount was 234 last year.
So the
234.
way it's broke out, he asked for 51,000 in mental health services for 2018. So are you looking at the total?
Yeah,
overall?
we've got them all
we've got-
grouped
we've got
as a
them all
total.
grouped.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's how, that's,
So it went up
Because you
9,000,
have-
it literally went up exactly $9,000. What's the increase from this last year?
within 4520, you have,
Hospital and
hospital
dental.
services, dental services, mental health services, which actually in 2017 was underestimated because there are some services that we received from Wasatch Mental Health that were not captured in our 2017.
So,
So there's some additional clinical
Right, so-
services that go on.
okay, so here's the problem, right? 2012, I'm gonna go from 2012 and read you what you've spent. 51,040, then the next year, 133,109, then 126, then 147, then 200, and then this year 234 was the budget, but so far you've spent 205,000. So at those kind of increases, what are we doing to help decrease those, or what's going on here? That's,
Well, we've added therapists, right? Mental health is a huge deal in corrections, as we well know. Mental health issues, APRN, clinical meetings, like say the therapists, all those things have increased, as you've mentioned, over time.
But Wasatch Mental Health, when they come in, they bill these people on Medicaid, so why is that an expense to the county? They only deal with Medicaid people, I thought.
So if you're incarcerated, and you're incarcerated over 30 days,
After,
Medicaid is gone.
right, okay, so this goes back to the question we had earlier. You guys aren't billing till 90 days later. You have a delay of 90 days.
Correct.
Are we losing funding because we're not billing for those first 30 days in Medicaid funding?
Well, if we can bill anything to a private insurance, to Medicaid, et cetera, we're trying to capture those costs.
Again,
Any service
my
that's
question on
provided.
Medicaid specifically.
Yep.
If you're waiting to delay 90 days to bill, do they penalize you and not pay it because it wasn't billed in that first 0 to 30
No,
days?
no.
They still make you
We're just
prove
in-
for that 0 to 30 day
Correct.
period?
We're just
Okay.
in the rears 90 days.
Okay.
Can I interject here? We don't bill Medicaid, so we don't get involved in any of that. So if there's
Why?
billing, because we can't. We're not a facility that's approved through Medicaid.
Okay, but if
Medicaid-
Wasatch Mental Health comes in under contract, they do.
They do.
Yes.
So the bills that we pay go directly to Wasatch Mental Health, but we don't directly pay Medicaid.
So you pay Wasatch Mental Health,
What they-
and Wasatch Mental Health gets Medicaid
What-
reimbursement.
Well, we pay them what they bill us. So if an
So they're
APRN,
probably billing you the difference.
well, I hope. I hope they're being honest partners.
Okay.
Have made conscious efforts to try to up the mental health availability of treatment.
Sure.
And based on the issues that you know that we've had and we've talked about before, it is increasingly difficult to get a reduction in any of these numbers. We're getting more and more people with more and more mental illness in there all the time. And then there's been a conscious effort through the state JRI and all these other things to try to get some treatment into the jail because we can't get these people over to the state health or state hospital.
So the same concern that I have on this is on the medical side. And I don't know that this is the case, so don't take it this way. But the concern or the question that's been asked to us before, not from you guys, is are we making sure these people that are Medicaid eligible that don't know they are we taking them through the process, whether it's on the medical side or the mental health side, so that we make sure we're capturing whatever dollars we can?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime we send somebody to an outside provider,
Okay.
we either attempt to bill personal
Okay,
medication.
so hold on.
Or Medicaid.
Let me make sure I understand that. When you send them to an outside provider, because we have stuff inside, the question is there a cost savings if we bill it through Medicaid and send them to the outside provider, or even a,
No,
what's our free one? Just over here.
Mountain Land.
Mountain Lands, for example, versus doing it in-house. And I understand that's a general statement, but
it's still not cost effective for us to do it in-house versus, it's more cost effective, for us to do it in-house if we can treat the problem than to send them outside.
even to like Mountain Lands or, it doesn't matter.
Regardless, yes.
Okay.
But if we send them to an outside provider, we
Okay.
always attempt to have their personal insurance or Medicaid billed. Going back to mental health, most of these people that we're talking about are probably being treated by Wasatch Mental Health or somebody else when they're outside of jail anyway. So we're aware of who those people are. I'm sure Wasatch Mental Health is
Okay,
also
so the same
aware.
thing I did to Public Works. When you try and tell me something can be done better and we are the only ones that can do it inside more, or we're more cost effective, how and why, right? Those are the questions I'm gonna want to understand why, because I don't. I'm not
So-
gonna pretend that I know.
So we have a PA, right?
Right.
It would be much more
Most of
cost
the time we
effective.
have him.
Yep. It would be much more cost effective to have him suture somebody if they need sutures than to send them to the hospital. Does that make, because we're already paying. We're already paying his cost, right? We're already paying his salary. So on things like that are minor that he can attend to in the facility, it's much more cost effective for us because we're already paying for his services to have him do that there than to send him to the hospital. Those are things that
Does
we
our PA
believe.
indemnify the county or,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Those are reasons that we actually sought to have a PA because he can reduce some of those things. He also can reduce the number of people
Okay,
we
but
actually
since we've
do
had
send.
him, we've had an increase though. That's why,
Well,
and it's hard because we haven't had him the whole time.
It's an anomaly of a year. Some of those people that have been over at UVRMC, as you know, a lot of these folks are They live a really
Which is
average
why the
lifestyle.
hospital wanted to team up with us, and that's why they're trying to find, because they know ultimately these people, once released, are potential for them. So that's why I say we've looked at it,
We've had a couple unique cases this year, as we've discussed,
right?
and you know what they are.
Is that there's no way to there's nowhere to transport some of these criminalistic people that are criminally minded to a place that they have for treatment. They don't have that kind of
Right.
a forensic place to do that. So it can only take place in the jail because they are sentenced to jail. And so, unlike the state hospital where you can take them where they have a forensic unit, Wasatch doesn't have a forensic unit to treat. So the treatment has to take place in the jail because they can't leave there for some other space unless it's a state hospital. And that's only done by court order.
Yeah. So what's the, so where's the balance? Because you certainly don't want to have a trauma 1 level hospital in the jail,
That's right.
because that's too far, that's
We
excessive.
don't even want to
on-
have an infirmary.
Right,
The minute that you do, then you take on certain responsibilities. Once you
Right.
declare yourself an infirmary or above that, then you start incurring some
so
very serious costs.
there is a side that doesn't make any sense at all.
That's right.
Yep.
And
And
then
I
there's a
think we're
side
there.
that, in which there's
some
some
confusion.
savings. So where do you see the balance? Where is it that it
Can I
makes
interject
sense?
with what
Sure.
your question is, and
You
then
bet.
your question too? There's some confusion on your end about when we had our meeting about, including Intermountain Healthcare in our treatment and trying to get a partnership going. But I believe what the confusion is that the level of care that Intermountain Healthcare or Mountain Lands is offering is less than it's equivalent to what we have in the jail.
No.
So it doesn't make sense to send someone with 2 deputies out to.
The only reason
a
we looked
facility.
at that was, again, Steve Smoot made the comment,
Yes.
their CEO, that said, eventually these are our people that we're going to take care of if they're released at no cost or as part of that. What he was attempting to do, and what was appealing to the commission, is we asked them to donate money back to help us defray some of this cost, or find efficiencies to see if those even existed. So
Okay.
we were just looking at that, not because the quality of care or anything is,
I only brought up that because you mentioned it just now.
right.
And what I'm telling you is that the confusion is that the level of care that these people get at our facility are basically what you would get like in a doctor's office or urgent care. Now, we don't do anything if it's an emergency, we send them to the hospital. Now, the increase that you're seeing right now is we have a lot, and we've been saying over the years, and I'm sorry, you folks haven't been here longer than what I have when doing this position. So I imagine what you're seeing is just a small little window of what's happening. But we're seeing sick patients right now that are very, very, very ill. As the sheriff mentioned earlier, we're starting to see a lot more homeless people coming from the north, coming into our county, and then we're taking on. I have a couple of cases right now that are spending a lot of our funds that I'm going to be we're asking for to help for next year. So that's the increase. The other increase is actually having someone there to see someone and get them proper care, because what's happening is sometimes these people are coming in, they're not getting the proper care, and then what happens is on the back end is the liability goes up on our end. So there's a give and take. If you want to balance the budget when it comes to the expense, I have no idea what our expenses are going to be in 6 months, 2
We're
days,
just
whatever.
trying to find a way to get ahead of that curve, because we know it's been increasing.
I'm with you.
And so that's what we're trying to say. If it's a halftime PA that decreases $200,000, my gosh, money ahead, right? And it may not have a simple answer, but that's really what we're trying to look at, because again, the problem is jails are sunk cost to the public, right? We all know they're necessary, but they're a sunk cost. So anywhere we can be, and you know, kudos to everybody that's out there. You've done a great job of maintaining.
Thank you.
But you know, and healthcare is increasing everywhere. We're trying to find solutions to see if we can't stop this curve from increasing 50% every year.
I agree with you, and that's my goal also.
Right.
And it has been for the last 12 years. Everybody that works for me, that's the same goal. We're all on the same page. Now, with regarding to we have a full-time PA, by the way, just, you guys approved that last budget.
Right, but it didn't start right away and didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't, but I can tell you from the cases that come across my desk, that, you know, I said that we do send people to the hospital, but the things that come across my desk that don't go to the hospital, I can tell you that this person has decreased our spending when it comes to outside providers and things like that. This person's offered us a level of professionalism in our building, which again, like I said, on the back end helps our liability, because I can't tell you how many cases in the past that just because we did the right thing, having the right person and having the right care, prevented an actual big lawsuit.
Sure.
And I think you should also understand, and I think you do know, though, that we are very proactive in talking and working with the judges. Anytime we can get a release from jail based on somebody's extreme medical costs, and those are multiple per month, we get the judges, as long as they will concur, then we'll release people back to their own
Right.
recognizance, or any way to get them out of the jail so that their medical costs don't come back to the county.
And I think we're saying the same thing, but we're probably seeing it from different angles, and that is that if we go to a level, a trauma 1, that's, again, I'm just gonna put it that way, that's over and that's too much, that doesn't work. It doesn't work for what we're trying to do, it doesn't work in a budgeting process, but there's got, that balance is where that's at, and if the PA is the balance, I don't know, but we need to get, we need to find where that balance is, that it meets the needs that we're looking at, and also the costs and the budgets that we're trying to uphold as well. That's what I'm trying to say in there, is that I don't know where that balance is for sure.
I think we're on the lower end of that balance, and always have been. What we have as far as the medical wing, it's not anything near an infirmary, it's not anything near a medical,
Right.
actual medical hospital care. We are at the lower end of that. The PA brought us up, I think, substantially as far as what we can give for the level of care to keep us out of liability. But as far as the costs, we're somewhat at the mercy of whatever comes through the door within what we can do mitigation-wise with the judges.
Because your primary responsibility is incarceration and corrections.
It is.
And that's what it is. It's not others, but we do have a responsibility and obligation that we have to meet.
And that's-
And anything elective and anything as far as even dental, our solution to dental is to pull the tooth.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
so we're not giving much as far as.
That'll help on that 15 cents of food.
Temporary filling or extraction on dental.
Right.
The standard is necessary care, so with correctional health care. The issue is the PA has dramatically reduced our liability. He's able to screen cases, determine who needs to go for additional services or who does not. I think that has helped reduce some of the costs. But as you know, we've had a couple of cases, one individual, $123,000 in the NIC ICU. I mean, that's, there's no way that you can plan or predict that.
Yeah.
And we've had some other people that require dialysis. It's very expensive. So if the judge sentences somebody to jail that has those needs, there's no way to predict that. There's no way to get out of it. But we try to mitigate as much as we can. I think this year has been
So let me just
And just so you know too, we have petitioned the judge to release them, and they have refused. Saying,
Sure,
no,
sometimes.
based on this guy's crimes and,
Right.
and his charges, they just flat won't let him out of jail.
So just for anyone who may listen to this, the request that the commission, when we talked to Intermountain,
yes.
was literally because they donate, or on their, whatever, their report they give us, $270 million worth of charitable value back to the county. What we literally presented to them and said, well, if you'll just subsidize 270,000 more, a portion of that would help control the cost. That's where we started. That's actually it wasn't, hey, these guys aren't doing it the right way, right? No, we're just looking for help to
Right.
control some of these costs that
And I think it was
unfortunately
a
in
good
healthcare are going
discussion.
up.
I think it was a good discussion. I don't know that they were willing to come to the table with the money part of it, but, the other part of that we talked about during that meeting was that the Medicaid rate for billing has gone up as well. And so that's something that from 2016 to 2017 also changed the amount that we're paying. in that we had that increase.
But
as
they
well.
could directly affect that by reducing that by a percentage and saying, as far as it applies to inmates from our jail, we would reduce that billing to this level. Those
I'd
are
like to see them
discussions that
eliminate
probably-
it.
Well, either way, I mean, that's up to the, to a discussion between the commission and them.
Right.
But they can reduce their costs to us at any time they're willing to do so.
Well, so, and I'll give you a reason why. This one, personally, my family, my grandfather suffered a stroke back in May. And because of Medicaid, has a supplement. He paid for a $185,000 event. The insurance covered $31,000 and he paid $2,600. I know because I'm helping him pay his bills, and the hospital wrote off the other remaining portion. Problem is, they bill the jail on that portion, but yet they write it off for my grandfather, which I'm appreciative, because I'm helping him. But then they turn that in and say to the county, this is part of the charitable good we're giving. And that's why the request, because again, you guys are feeling the pain, and here we are spending 25 minutes talking about something that you're trying to control every day like we are, but we might not be able to control it in the end.
As a point of discussion, though, that would be a great thing to take back to them and say, look, you affect the entire county when you write something off, every person in this county who's a taxpayer, when you write off or reduce something that comes back to a billing to the jail.
Right.
Because in effect, it's taxpayer
It
money
is.
that
Taxpayer
comes
money.
across the county.
It is,
And I
because
think
if we
that
had to
would be
raise
a good-
taxes 10% just to cover jail medical,
There
you're
you go.
right.
I think that would be a strong talking point to go back and have some more negotiation with them.
I don't know if you recall in that meeting, and I'm sorry to the public that is listening, but we did ask them twice in that meeting if they were willing to
Right.
provide us relief when it came to the charity. Now, I believe what we're wanting is really simplistic, but really how it works is not. And because there's certain laws and requirements for not-for-profits that have to abide by in order to move money from one place to another. So those things are a little bit more complicated, and I believe that is actually where the problem is with Intermountain Health.
Yeah, but there's nothing that says you can't take 2017 year when you finish it and give it to Deneen in March of 18.
Totally agree.
And we go back and we get a 2017 reimbursement going into 2018 to help offset. Even if we're a year in delay, at least then there's a start.
I believe, but I agree, and again, I said, that is for me, that would be the simple.
Yeah.
It is in my
solution.
mind, which is why we asked.
But it is more complicated.
Sure,
when
and
you
we
start
also,
talking about
you know-
tax laws and
Sure.
charitables.
And I know this one didn't work out, but I know we asked them, part of it was they asked us, they said, well, maybe we can help with the medicines and we can help with the pills and so we didn't know, so we said, yeah, that should be part of the conversation. And that's how, we kind of go down the path. Now, if it could have turned out that they could have, just be on a bulk basis, that they could have gave us a better deal or whatever the case may be, then we should be looking at things like that.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you guys ever heard anything back from them. We asked them to look at if you remember, right, the billing rate, the Medicare rate, Medicaid rate, on billing. I never did hear anything back from them. I don't know whether Dale did or not, and I don't know whether you did.
No, I
But we
haven't-
never
I
heard
haven't.
anything back on pharmaceutical buying power or
Right.
on the other part. So a follow-up discussion,
We will when
Probably
the
would be,
charitable
you
comes
know-
up for review this spring.
it probably wouldn't be bad to have
Yeah.
some follow-up discussion.
Yeah, because why not if we can save some,
Absolutely.
you bet. Okay. Well, we're only on number.
All right, so, yeah, we've been through 3, right?
Yep.
Unless you've got any questions. All right. Because we kind of went off of the priority list to some other things, but that's all right. Rethermalization ovens, number 4. As you guys know, there's 2 that are scheduled to be replaced this year. There's 3 additional remaining, and that's what that money is for. If we could stick that in a restricted account, kind of like we talked about earlier.
So you don't know that you'll
Deneen.
have to replace them?
We anticipate we're going to have to.
Do we have, with all the,
They're at end of life.
with all the jail stuff, is there a program in place for,
There is now,
okay, thank you.
yes.
That was done last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've gone through and identified all the equipment. So once the dishwasher, the bakery ovens, and these retherms have been replaced, we're now
In the
starting over again.
The thing I like
So-
about a program like that is if something comes up, you can say, oh, I think we might be able to get another year, and
Yep.
then you have some flexibility instead of just
Yep.
working on reaction.
Yes, and one of the things that we talked about with Deneen earlier was starting to identify that equipment, make sure that it's in the budget, so that if it does go down that year, at least it's in,
There's a line
and,
item.
and you guys are aware of it. The problem with a lot of this equipment, they say it's got a 10 to 12-year life expectancy, but literally, it could be 2 years old and break and not be replaceable. So,
Well, much of that is used in a business 8 to 5 type setting when they don't understand it's being used in a you know, a almost 24-hour cycle for, literally for the incarceration. I mean, we're serving, what,
1.3,
3
you know, I
million.
mean, this is commercial grade equipment, and it's,
Should be.
and when they say 10 to 12 years, it's based on a commercial kitchen, but as the sheriff points out, that's not some kitchen that's producing
So why is
1.3
some of this
million
not in
meals a
your
year.
internal service lease?
Well, we've talked about that before as well. About recapitalization, you mean, or what?
Oh, no, I mean, as part of your public works.
Well, a lot of this, again, we will be working through that where that will become a moot point eventually, we think. But a lot of this equipment was originally put in at the time that they bonded and built the
Right.
facility. So some of this is approaching 20 years old. But it was bought not under any recapitalization because it was all part of the FF&E or whatever that came out when originally this building was first built. So we're just going through the replacement cycle now where it's starting to come on to a recapitalization rather than what was originally put together as the original purchase when we
Okay.
bought the building.
To your question, Greg, this was something that we've had discussion, I think it might have even been the first year that you were here.
Mm-hmm.
We talked with Public Works about, should this be included in their budget or our budget? And the way things sorted out, we decided that it would be in ours, that we
Okay.
would include it in ours.
I have no problem with that. But then I come down and I'm looking at theirs now, right?
Yep.
What in the heck is a muffin monster under the security center?
That is something that processes everything that goes out of there, whether it's human waste,
It's a
whether it's
grinder.
toothbrushes, whether it's paper, whether it's styrofoam that gets flushed
Okay,
down the
again,
toilet.
but this is on their budget.
Yes,
See, and this
that's
is
not something we budget for.
Right.
That's theirs.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's hard
It's
for me to
example.
go back and through because then $50,000 for cameras and monitors, which I called you and made
Yes.
sure because we replaced that a couple months ago, and yet here it is on their budget, and yet you and I both know that all got replaced, and there's no need because the sheriff would have come to us or you would have come to us saying there's a need. There's no need for it, and that's why I say part of this. That's the hard part for me is I go through and say, okay, holding cabinets. I listen to you and I'm like, yep, you're right. We need to make sure we're planning for this. And then I go through this and I've got $316,400 for the security center, which you don't have a clue about because they've never talked to you about it. And then some of this is on here for you to request. Some of it's radios. I don't know. And so to me, it's like, oh, we're double accounting, and all of a sudden we've got $400,000 of fluff built in between the three departments, and then you're all going to get blamed and say, well, golly, y'all have plenty of money.
Yeah.
Whose job is it really? That's what I'm trying to get at.
And we don't ever know whether that's recapitalization that they finally put on.
You're right.
Or whether that's another additional
Which,
purchase.
since you watched, you know I told them you're all supposed to get a copy of this and go over it with a timeline.
Yeah, we haven't.
and we
seen
haven't.
that.
And I know you haven't because they've only been in here. They were
You asked me about it, I have no idea what is in
Sure.
there, so. yeah.
bio machine, electric locks, electron. I mean, some of these are huge.
But you have a list, right? Now.
I don't.
you-
I haven't
and-
seen it.
And what's capital projects and what's,
I haven't seen it.
And $50,000 for showers. I swear, since I've been here, we've been replacing showers every day.
So a lot of those showers, you're talking about showers that were in the original part of the building that were tiled, and they do need to be redone. So,
Sure, but
That's
my problem
ongoing.
is you haven't seen
But I
this
haven't
list, so I
seen
don't.
it.
I want to be able to come to the people looking. Again, I point out here and I look at these seats, and these people have all been comfortable for 3 hours on carpet that doesn't look like they need to be replaced. But yet all of a sudden, I got $60,000 worth of expenses to replace a room that's
And
quite honestly in better shape than most of the county.
And unfortunately, we do rely on their expertise to
Right.
tell us, because we're not mechanical engineers, we're not carpenters, and so we rely on their expertise to tell us what the timelines are for replacement and the cost.
And so that's what I'm trying to understand is whose job. I understand your explanation, but I'm trying to understand where that ends. So the second it goes below the ground, it's all theirs, or because I want to just be able to keep
Yeah.
track of it.
And like I
Right.
said, the list we were talking about was mostly kitchen. That's the list that we've got prepared.
Sure.
Most of this other stuff is not part of what the listing is
Yeah,
that we have.
what we kind of, if you remember that discussion, what we sorted out was that if it was inmate furniture, if it was building, if it was those types of things, that was theirs. when it came to like kitchen equipment, things like that, that was for us to manage and to budget for.
Because we see that every day, and we know the conditions as they're deteriorating or as we need to replace, but that other stuff, we just don't know, yeah.
So for
What a
instance, if
chiller
it was a
needs.
generator, if a generator was going bad, that's theirs, that's
Yeah, we
not
have
us.
no idea.
Muffin Monster, obviously, and there's 3 of them incidentally
Yeah.
out there. That would be theirs as
What
well.
it is it's a requirement to keep the lines clean. It processes and grinds everything to an acceptable size so it can go through the lines and into the sewage system.
Right.
And that's
A
what
lot
they
of
are.
people that live in my neighborhood, we all have them too, because Salisbury didn't bury the lines far enough.
I'll
we-
bet you don't have as
we-
big a one as we have.
No, I don't.
And we actually found
But I
out,
thought of putting clear tubes and selling it for admission to watch.
I'm surprised the mafia, I'm surprised the
Shoots
mafia
it.
doesn't have these for body disposals back east, you know, I mean.
there should be actually 4 of them, we found out. We had Spanish Fork City that came to us that were quite upset about items that were clogging their filter system. And we found out that anything from the annex, that system is not on.
Tell them we'll fix it when they allow us to put a fence up.
Anyway, long story short of it, they brought us a
Good
bag
dodge.
of material that had made it to their facility. They were not terrifically pleased about it, so
Well,
we've tried to mitigate
We're not
that.
terrifically pleased the fact that they try and dictate how we should run it too.
Well,
By we, I mean me.
so item number 5 is a Globe mixer, another kitchen equipment item that will likely need to be replaced this next year. Items 6 through 8 are for the K9 that was donated to us by Universal. So this is maintenance of that
Can we talk
K9
about this program real quick?
Yeah.
Why is the K9 under yours?
We have a K9 under ours to go out and assist with business searches and also the annex. If you understand JI, those guys go out to businesses every day, partner businesses, come back in. So it's to help prevent contraband being introduced back into the facility,
Okay.
and also go out and assist those partner businesses to make sure that our inmates aren't receiving contraband while they're out there working at those partner businesses. That's why Universal actually
They do the
helped
same
us.
training for our canines that are on the patrol
This
side.
this is a single purpose dog. It's just a drug dog.
Okay. Okay.
So those 3 items are just to maintain that canine program.
Ironically, that's about the amount to replace a dog.
Yep,
Yes, it
it
is.
is. Number 9 is a portable radio. Again, an officer safety issue. We talked about that earlier. Currently, we do not have one for some of those folks that are out doing home checks and JI hostage negotiations, et cetera. Number 10 is $100,000 additional overtime specifically for
Huh.
transportation. And let me tell you why that has become problematic and an issue. And this actually bleeds over into enforcement with judicial services. Courts are now running until 6 and 8 o'clock at night. And as a consequence, we have guys from judicial services that are having to stay at the courts. We have transportation officers that are tied up on
Which courts?
District.
these are district court
Okay.
cases,
District court.
and it's specifically related to first appearances. Since we had AOC change the judicial law requiring a person have their first appearance within
24 hours.
well, actually 4 days. So bail and bond, bail, bond, and the PC has to be reviewed within 24 hours. They have to have their first appearance within the 4 days. As they're going to court, that calendar is enormous. And so those guys are sitting there, like I say, a lot of times until 8 o'clock at night. So you have 2, sometimes 4 guys that are tied up at court, not to mention judicial services that are tied up because of court proceedings. And as a result, we're seeing the impact of that. It's either add additional people to be able to accommodate that or add overtime funds.
And these
That's
are
kinda where
recent
we're at.
legislative issues that have been come through the state legislature as mandates in statute now.
Unintended
and they used-
consequences.
What's that?
Yes,
Unintended
Ah,
consequences.
yes, again.
So,
or intended. I'm not sure
Yeah.
which. Yep.
so where it says overtime additional, that tends to make me believe you know how much you currently have in there for court transports. What's that amount? What do you anticipate of your huge budget? What's the rough dollar amount for court
So
transports?
just for court transports, we're probably in the neighborhood of about 175,000 a year.
So you're anticipating
overtime.
about 275.
No, we'd be about 75 and then an additional
Okay.
100.
Okay. So doubling it.
Yeah, almost double.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if we, but you said something that wasn't really under your breath because it into a microphone, unless we add additional staff.
Yeah.
So if we add one additional person,
You'd have to add 2, sorry. It's basically you're sending 2 people to court.
Yeah, we always transport with 2 based on security.
okay, so
issues.
if we added 2, you wouldn't need any overtime in this budget or just the additional requests?
If we had 2 additional people in a van, yeah, we probably wouldn't need the additional overtime. But then we would just adjust their schedule so they take
Any
care of that.
overtime or just the additional?
That
Just the
additional.
Okay. It's
There's-
an
The additional.
important distinction, that's
Yeah,
why.
yeah, there's still certain times like a trial goes long, so we can't transfer that defendant back.
I understand, because in my mind, I'm saying, okay, I know what one makes with full benefits, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, you can have your overtime before I'd staff 2. That's why I'm asking,
It'd be the-
that additional is a big number.
This is the cheaper of the
Sure.
alternatives. Number 11, so 11 through 16 actually come from our strategic plan that we submitted to you some time back.
2 years ago.
And so what we've done is we've identified those positions that were identified in our strategic plan, and also by needs. We've talked about the mail clerks for a couple years now,
Actually, had a story on KSL or Channel 2 that came and did one.
KSL, yep. So this additional property clerk identified in the strategic plan, there's the justification that went along with that, if you want to read that, or we can go over it if you'd like, but it's fairly lengthy. I don't know that you want me to read it, but in essence, there's a lot more mail, there's a lot more property, et cetera. With JRI, our incarceration rate's actually gone down, but our bookings have gone up. So our process in and out have gone up. Our actual incarceration number's gone down. So those that are staying,
That's good.
it's not a bad thing.
I mean, there's a
Yeah.
higher cost on the one end, but we're
Right.
still saving a lot more on the other.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
total day cost is less.
Yep. So we've gone from about 33-day average to about a 21-day average now. Number 12 is to upgrade
Wait.
4. Go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, no,
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Number 12 is to upgrade 4 RNs to charge nurses. In the strategic plan, this was actually another nursing supervisor. I had Alan Bennett come to me and say, if we upgraded these nurses, they could take some of the delegated tasks that another nursing supervisor would have, or that Alan has, and take care of those responsibilities. To upgrade the RNs, obviously, 4 of them is $46,296, which is a whole lot cheaper than
In
adding.
total.
In total.
Okay.
Which is a whole lot cheaper than adding a nursing supervisor, which would probably be about 146.
But you're also asking for 4 additional RNs.
Down later, yes. And that's in the strategic plan as well. So in the strategic plan, there was a nursing supervisor and 4 RNs. That's what was identified in there.
But-
Here we're saying upgrading 4, go ahead.
That also assumed a certain occupancy rate at the jail, right? And so, going back to what you just said, I'm giving you a chance to clarify this.
Yep.
Our bookings are up,
Yes.
but our housing is down, our
Our
overall.
housing numbers are down.
So
Yeah.
then why would we need it? I mean, aside from the extremely high medical number that's going up, why do we need additional people to handle a decreased number of inmates?
So the charge nurses or the nursing supervisor, right now, Alan, he doesn't have time to perform his responsibilities. I mean, being completely honest, he's doing things that he shouldn't be doing, which takes him away from doing things that he should be doing, like inventory and about a bunch of other things, reviewing all of the charted notes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He doesn't have enough time in the day to do those things. If we took those 4 charge nurses, they could do some of those things that he's currently doing, freeing him up to do the things that are in his job description. So thereby reducing our liability. As you guys well know, the highest area of liability in the jail is medical, hands down. It's where all of our lawsuits are. Whenever we're sued, that's where it is.
The strategic plan that you put into place,
Yes.
though, That was before GRI, I mean, excuse me, GRI.
No,
That was before
it was-
ICE.
It was before ICE, that's correct, yes. We still had ICE inmates, yes. However, even ICE or whether it's regular inmates, it doesn't matter. Actually, I would say there were probably less medical concerns with the ICE inmates than there are with our own that come in. Most of them didn't have the addiction issues, the abscesses, the at-risk health issues that most of our local offenders bring to jail. So the medical care, the additional medical care with ICE was, I mean, it was pretty minimal, really. Okay. Any questions on 12 that I haven't answered? Nope. As far as the charge nurses. Number 13, conversion of a current storage room. It's a property overflow room. There is absolutely zero organization to that room. What we're asking for is to be able to convert that so that it's on the same type of system as what we have in our current property room. If you guys have been out there, you've seen that conveyor belt system, which organizes it so that you know what's there, you can recall.
But wasn't
you
this
can call
part
by
of
number.
the architect's assessment, like, wasn't this what we,
I don't think so.
okay.
I don't believe so. So it's just literally it's a square room right now where we go in and we put our excess property.
Right, but when they came out and interviewed you guys, you didn't talk to them about this for architectural
You know,
design?
we may have, I don't
Okay.
recall, to be honest with you. We talked about a number
That
of
was the
things.
intent.
We're gonna have to add some additional, property storage, yep. So with that, conversion of that room to put in that conveyor system, that organizational system is about almost $21,000. Number 14, add another sworn position to the kitchen. Currently, as you guys know, there's only 2. The kitchen is outside the secure area of the jail. Obviously, if there's an area that's more dangerous in the jail, it's the kitchen. They have access to all sorts of instruments that other people do not. Even though we do our best to tether knives and tether equipment and things like that, it's still it's a dangerous place. And if you don't know, the quality of inmate is not the same as what it used to be 15 years ago. We have an increasingly difficult time finding those that qualify based on their criminal history or their current criminal charges, et cetera, bail, so on and so forth, to work in the kitchen. So it would be just a way to provide more supervision from a different level. I don't think we do have cooks that are in there, and their job is to help them cook. And it is to supervise, but it's not necessarily to intervene if there was a, so it would just give us more ability to be able to do that. The cost on that's $97,071. Number 15, going along with that strategic plan, it was to add 2 property clerks, so that's the second of the 2. Number 16 is the 4 RNs that we've already kind of addressed. That was part of the strategic plan. Number 17 is $2,500 additional to the 42,350, 4,800 account that's specifically for inmate clothing. 18 through 20 would come out of the 273 account, which is the inmate trust fund. 18 is to hire an additional time-limited instructor for our Chain Breakers program. If you're not familiar with that, that is specifically targeted to individuals who we identify. Right now, it's just the females that we've identified who have to meet certain criteria in order to participate in that program. We've been fairly successful. We have a aftercare, which is 100% voluntary. An aftercare night over here at the Health and Justice Building this last week. We had 12 people show up for voluntary aftercare services. So that additional therapist would help with that program. Obviously, the goal there is to keep people from coming back to jail. We've placed a lot of folks out into residential treatment. Here again, it goes back to GPS. We've actually incorporated some devices with some of those folks to help them hopefully not engage in their criminal conduct addiction once they're released. So thus far, it's been fairly successful. Granted, that we're only about 6 months into this program, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
This is way off topic, and but I want to have a further discussion because it just popped in my mind. You said treatment and GPS, and it sparked my mind. I know your policy very well now on medicating and stuff like that. Question is it possible to potentially do some of these treatments while on a GPS monitoring? So anyway, it's not a budget discussion, but
We've already done that. We have already adjusted the medications that people are allowed to be on while on GPS.
no, I understand. But like I say, I want to have that discussion with you guys a little later with the other commissioners, because some of the suggestions are out there, which
Yep.
is, if I don't say it when it comes to my mind, it'll never happen again.
Write it down. Write it down.
Now it's on video. I don't have to worry.
All right, all right. $1,000 to replace some of the worn DVD players for programming. This is
Why don't you
additional.
buy them on Black Friday?
We could.
Then they're really cheap.
Hey, we'll look for the best deal we can, right? $9,538 additional for GED testing. We actually had a shortage this last year. We had to come up with some additional money out of that account, move it around. So we graduate more people in GED in our facility than all the other institutions in the state of Utah. We actually had about 50% of GEDs completed statewide last year. So that's something that we're proud of.
So-
We're proud of the programming that we provide.
Does obtaining a GED help the graduation rates? Do they get to go back and recalculate them at these schools? Because I know that's a big deal. When I was student teaching in the
I
Alpine
don't
School
know that,
District.
but I know at least on their applications for a job, they can put down that they have.
No,
a
no, I understand
GED.
that. The reason I ask is because some of these schools are being hammered because they only have an 84%.
Yeah.
So the question that I'm having is, if a GED allows them to go back and recalculate and shows a completion percentage, we might want to hit up the school districts as far as helping to fund a portion of this.
Well, you know,
Nemo
all,
does.
You know what I mean?
you know all this goes through Nebo School District.
Right, but we don't just incarcerate Nebo School District.
Why?
No, but
they've donated the teacher and.
I know, but that's what
salary.
I'm saying, to supplement the additional $9,500, if it does actually go, my guess is we could reach out to Alpine School District very quickly and get that kind of money, because it's a big deal in education. It's a big deal. If it computes.
yeah, I don't know where all those folks are from. I mean, obviously state or countywide, even statewide. We don't,
Sure.
if somebody comes in and they're from Cedar City and they want to participate in GED, we don't prohibit them from doing that, so.
Sure.
And the last item on here, I think, is one that we're going to discuss possibly obtaining this year, but it's on for next year's budget, and that is a mail and body scanner. Obviously, there's increasing risks associated with narcotics being sent through the mail and secreted inside of people's bodies. We had one individual that we sent up to the prison here about a month ago who, when he arrived at their facility, was overdosing. They sent him through their body scanner and found out that he had ingested balloons, which were still in his system, and he was ODing. So potentially he could have OD'd in our facility had he stayed there long enough. And we have no way of knowing whether or not that exists. Fortunately, the prison did. They have a scanner, and they sent him up to the University of Utah, and were able to mitigate that. But you know, we've had issues in the past where
We have.
people have OD'd.
And I think you know that there's one that was significantly impactful on a certain individual. But the other thing that I think is there's an emerging risk that was not a risk a year ago, and this is fentanyl and cofentanyl. And the problem is this scanner that's for the mail can help identify those substances without the individuals, our people, having to touch those. They can, you know, and if that fentanyl is put on the skin, or cofentanyl especially, it's like 150 times more strong than just your regular opioids. And it can be ingested through the skin in such minute amounts that you can OD without ever having an idea that you have something even on
Is
your,
that the
on your
one they
skin.
call pink or whatever?
No, I don't know what
Like
they call
that.
it.
It's, you remember the Park City
Yes.
issue? Yeah.
That might be part of it, but there's increasing issues out on the street,
Where would you put this?
right,
The mail scanner would be in the mail room.
in the mail room.
And,
yeah.
and that's as much for our.
So these are two different scanners.
They
Yes.
are, it's two
Okay.
scanners.
Okay, so,
One for mail and then one for body as you come through. the
Believe it
door.
or
so
not,
the
the
inmate
mail
scanner,
scanner-
you would replace the current scanner as you walk through the correction side door as you
Well,
go into
one's
the.
for metal detection and the other one's for internal body.
Yeah.
So you would use both. Go through the first one to make sure they don't have a gun on them, second one to see what's internal.
There's not a scanner that does metal, okay. That was.
So we would probably put the body scanner, either in pre-book or just inside of that pre-book area going into booking. The mail scanner would be in the mailroom, obviously. That's as much for our staff's protection as it even is with inmate
What's the
protection, because
breakdown
as the
on-
sheriff is.
What's the breakdown on the two of them?
So,
I'm assuming the body scanner's a lot more money.
no,
Yes.
believe it or not, the mail
It-
scanner is more expensive.
I thought the one was
The
48.
mail scanner is like 100, or, no, I don't have it here, it's back at my office. It's like 117,000, the mail scanner is.
Okay.
So, which would put the, body scanner at like 111. I was actually shocked that the mail scanner was more
You
expensive.
have these in order of preference.
They are in order of
Priority.
preference, yep.
Okay.
Which you know what that means generally for your scanners.
Well, the one question we had, and I think that's worth discussing here right now, there are overages as we have in certain areas, including 1100, that we traditionally have not touched unless we have a conversation with the commission. If we could get that stuff here physically delivered before the requirement at the end of the year, would that be something, I think it's of importance enough to look at possibly getting it this year, if it could get here out of some of those overages. And
Well,
that's just-
that would be a discussion I think we'd have to look
Okay.
overall, because we know that across the entire county, and sometimes to balance everything out all the way through the year, you know, there's a certain amount of expectation that there's gonna be that at the end too. So, I mean, it'll be an overall look.
Would it be something you would entertain, kind of like the cameras last year, which, as we're looking at that, winding the year down, that the equipment didn't have to be delivered here by December 31, that we would carry over the monies if there were monies there, and we could order it into
Well,
next year.
but let's keep in mind, the reason we did the cameras, they were failing.
Agreed.
There's a big difference.
Well, this doesn't exist, and it's an identified, it's a serious need, it really is.
Right, but what I'm saying is we understand why we have to have cameras, working cameras immediately, right? They break tomorrow, we're replacing them tomorrow.
Right.
Absolutely.
Adding scanners is a new level that again, I think requires more discussion than what we've given it here today.
Okay.
And I think that's what I hear, Commissioner Lee, at least for me, that's,
Well,
that, you know,
And that's why I
Well,
say
just
it's
because
something that we could.
it would affect our budget.
That's
as we
right.
Finalize our budget
Yep.
out
Sure,
through
it
the
would.
end of the year.
Un-
And I don't know where that's
Understanding though
at.
that this
I
is
have no idea.
an emerging threat as far as the fentanyl, the co-fentanyl that we did not know about a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dangerous enough to let drugs go down in mail and all these other things, but the risk to just the staff has gone exponentially up based on this fentanyl issue. And it actually has even gone back into the enforcement area, that now there's changing protocols that people are not allowing, if you seize drugs on the street and it might be fentanyl, you don't know, they're not even testing them there anymore out on the street like they used to do the NIC kits. I mean, just that interaction there can tip somebody over based on just the powder that's breathed in just the finest of mist, you know? So there's an emerging threat on the street also, which is making us look at having each of our people carry maybe 2 doses of the Narcan instead of just one, based on the propensity of being, you know, contaminated on something that you didn't even know existed a year ago, that is
Yeah.
so deadly.
Wow.
But that threat has come up in the jail in this mail issue based on our people having to go through all mail to make sure there's not something going in that's contraband.
Sure.
So it's an emerging threat that's really come on in the last 6 to 8 months.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff?
Where are we at here?
Only if you have anything else to add, we're through them.
Good, no, I
Yeah.
think I'll just close by just saying, we appreciate the time that you've taken for this review. We think there are some critical needs that have gone down the road quite a ways, based on budgetary, the lack of budgetary, opportunities for quite some time. But some of these that, even though they're numbered and they are prioritized, a significant number down those are really considered basic needs. And so we would request that a serious look at, funding some of these, we could get to the point where we're not, at least we can mitigate the safety, and operational issues for our people that are out on the road and in corrections, because there are some significant ones that have emerged lately. Plus, we've seen an increase, like say, in the unincorporated area with a lot of these people who are coming here based on a new situation that's in the northern counties that has caused quite a consideration up in our canyons that we've discussed before. So thank you for your time on that.
Okay, thanks, Sheriff. All right, that closes this. Thank you.
This round.
This round, yes.
Hey.
Well, and we took a break.
Yeah.